Shall we sort of just start? Shall we just?
Maybe she knows how it works.
Yeah, she knows. So, okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. So nicely in time. My name is Kees Biekert. I am working here as a staff member at the Institute, and I was asked to facilitate this fishbowl. And I'm going to walk around a little bit because we have a circle, as you see here. And we are going to do a open fishbowl discussion. And I will explain briefly. Well, Cassie thinks, what is this guy walking around? Getting dizzy. So we hope also that people will sit everywhere, because here in the center is where it happens. So the shape of the fishbowl basically are concentric circles, and in the middle, you would say, are the people that speak. This is a way of trying to get a discussion with lots of people, without people speaking too long, and with people being able to intervene if they want to. Now, what is the principle? There are 4 chairs in the middle, and the 4 chairs are occupied now by 2 people. There's 2 empty chairs. Georgina is coming in the 3rd chair, and there's always one of the 4 chairs empty. So that's sort of the interesting dynamic of the fishbowl. There's 1 chair empty. So here's the conversation starting, and we'll get. I'll just introduce the starters of the fishbowl in a minute. But the important principle of the fishbowl is that if someone thinks he or she would like to intervene in the discussion or contribute or ask a question, there is an empty chair. So you take the chair, and then one of the 3 has to get up to make room in order to make sure there's another empty chair. So one big rule, there's always 1 empty chair, and any of you is allowed to get in. There's no hierarchy here, okay? So that's why we have 4 corridors. Actually, we have more. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's a little one. This one is stopping. We have 4 corridors. So if you're close to the corridor, you can run up, or just walk up here and sit here. Now, what is important in this mechanism, and you'll see how it works, that other than with a panel, where you sit behind a table and talk, and people wait and want to say something, here you can already think, I want to say something. So you're prepared. So you're prepared whilst you're walking up to the center of the fishbowl, and you contribute. And you're allowed to leave again. One important thing, don't sit too long here. So my role as a facilitator is to make sure, 1, that if people sit here too long, I take measures. Yeah. And secondly, I have to make sure there's always 1 empty chair, because you, as participants of the fishbowl, are also responsible that the discussion is going. Okay, so that's the method. What is the topic? The topic for today is the future research agenda on the topics that we are discussing. And we are getting a brief introduction by Professor Kuruda on, let's say, some pointers. And he asked to use PowerPoint. When I said, PowerPoint in the fishbowl, that's not possible, because there's always someone sort of with the back to the... But anyway, we'll do that. We'll just experiment with that. And then we have 2 first commentators, Georgina and Kathy, who are going to respond and get the discussion going. So the sooner you think, I want to intervene, I have something to say, take the empty chair.
Okay, so I have only person privilege to talk longer than 10 minutes. And so assume we have living in a town, very small town, and the Georgina is a bakery, and the Catherine is running a liquor shop, but suddenly formal currency stopped work. Europe doesn't work. So, but you have a lot of bread, and you have a lot of stock of wine. We have will to sell and purchase, but the only problem is currency do not exist. Then Georgina began to issue his Georgina note. So purchaser is bakery can purchase any bread has note, and Catherine follows. She also issued the Catherine note. It's available any kind of wine, and the island butcher, I follow. Any kind of meat can purchase my Kuroda's note, but the people now began to mix a butcher note for Kuroda. It's useful to the bakery for Georgina. So a note issued by shop can be available, all commodity in this town. Is any problem? No problem. But this is not the assumption. I'm sorry. Yes. And this has happened to this 1929, a town in China. This town just 300 household, but 300 household. But 36 shops issue independently its own note, the grocery, grain dealer, etc. A lot of all kind of these shops issue their own notes, but people mix and people continue their exchange, the trade, no problem at all. And for this is not isolated case. Nobody cannot count, but perhaps more than 10,000 regions in China in this period do the same. Oh, so no, this has no legal back, no intrinsic value at all. But instead of that, no, people could make exchange. Oh, no intrinsic value, no legal back. But currency can work. In this case, no bank exists. But even society who has already depended on bank, but if bank is going to fail, close, what happened? What happened? And this is in 1931, the Great Depression, a town in the United States, Tenino. There is just one bank, but it's going to it close the door, and not yet bankrupt. But all people has the bank account, the Tenino Citizen Bank, but no currency running, so everything stopped. Then the Chamber of Commerce, they make a device. They issue the total amount equivalent to a quarter of all deposit of this bank. They issue, but part of the issuance was this. I'm sorry. Yeah, quite this. Okay. This is wooden tablet. So wooden tablet of 25 cents circulated for several years. But this is no legal back, no guarantee, and this is the bank deposit that is sound to be backed, but actually bank appear to be is going to bankrupt. So no legal guarantee and no interest value. But people just accept. Otherwise, they have to make trade just in barter. So there is no explicit legal guarantee. Thank you. Yeah, guarantee, and know the interest value, but people just accept. They share very loose or implicit agreement, and this is not the isolated case at all. You can find many similar cases across the world and through the history. Yeah, sorry. Yes, so. This is the first message. But why they can accept, they should accept, because currency is always in shortage. But why currency is always in shortage? And sometimes the issuer of this sort of local node has a reason, printed reason. They say, suddenly copper cash disappear and silver is too expensive to mediate the local transaction. That is why we issue the local nodes. It's already happened. The issuer, the thing sold. This is under special case. That is why I emergently issue this sort of device. But this is not true, because we can find same similar case across the world, through the world. So this is not special at all. So why shortage of currency is so ubiquitous? Why? Well, the reason is quite simple. This is quite scientific statistics. For some of you come from UK. Now UK, £1 equivalent exchange to 100 pence, but it's not. Before 1971, it was under the £1 equal 240 pence from the fall of Roman Empire. But they changed the currency system. Then Royal Mint seriously worry about how many coinage is necessary, because they have to change the entire coinage. But if they overissue unnecessarily, it brings inflation and vice versa, deflation. That's why they ask the Barclay, etc., they try to count the coinage and the date of issuance. And they incidentally found, this is the statistics, by denomination. In average, 2 out of 100 coins disappear annually. That means it's within 30 years, half of currency disappear. And another point is, the difference of wastage rate quite large. The smallest denomination, half the pence, almost 4 coinage out of 100 disappear, or out of track of the bank circuit, while the higher denomination stayed in the circuit of bank circulation. That suggests smaller denomination currency far faster disappear from the track of bank circuit. So currencies disappear. So that means someone have to add every year. Otherwise, we cannot maintain the size of transaction. And this is case. This case, we can find the same result, almost the similar investigation, 1960s United States. And the United States and UK, 1960s, know that the society most deeply dependent on banking system. Most of people have bank account. But in spite of that, 2 out of 100 coin fail to return bank. So you can easily assume, if you have no bank, perhaps far more coin fail to return to issuer. If you assume 5 out of 100 coin disappear, so just 20 years, more than half of coins, they almost ceased to stop to work. So something must be done. And this is some improvement. This is a case of China in medieval periods, the excavation. This suggests, and left-hand side is a relatively large number. The right-hand side is a relatively small number. That suggests perhaps this large number is a result of intentional accumulation, while this side is relatively this small number. So perhaps this is not intentional hold, perhaps just straight. Interesting is, both have 300 years coin. So particularly this size, smaller, the excavation suggests even the unintentional, the group of coins contain the 300 years issuance. So that suggests coin rarely return to issuer and the state to circulate. So anyway, currency is always stagnant rather than current. So that means it's a currency easy to distribute, but difficult to assemble on demand. That is why if something happens or a local have to make some device to create more currency, and that is why local currency always appears. But why? Why currency is necessary? Because we can have another solution that is, so for example, credit. I assume we are now living in the same town. I said Georgina and Catherine issued the note, but another solution is the Georgina and Catherine keep the account book and just make transaction just credit. In that case, you need no currencies. But the problem is, there's two directions. A society has closed the social relationship. This is a village that consists of 6 households, and this round is the market. And the same size of transaction, but this society depends on mutual credit between the villagers, while this society depends on more market. That means this pattern needs small denomination currencies because they need always the device for very good level transaction, while this case it depends on mutual trust. So you can advance your commercial activity both ways, but it is quite a different direction of substance. And this way must make society more anonymous, while this way makes society very cohesive. So you have to choose this way or this way. And both appear to be local. This appears to be depend on local currency, while this appears to be local credit. Both can be local market, but money has a variety. And that's why I always insist the quality of money is important than quantity of money. And if it's the locality of money, we can arrange this way and turn intangible ways. But the intangible ways, it's only available, useful among the well-acquainted best customer because they depend on trust. And this means it has limited access. While if you issue currency, it's tangible, it makes the transaction anonymous and open usage. Everyone can access, but it must be fragmented supply, and it's quite easy to stagnant. That is not the problem. So, anyway, you have to choose, and the quality of money depends on social relationship. This is a message of my presentation. So, anyway, don't be trapped by the dichotomy, money and society. The quality of money depends on social relationships. Oh, that is all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, you can give a hand, absolutely. Thank you very much, Professor Kuroda. I did not introduce you properly as you are an expert on financial history and linked to the Institute of Advanced Studies of Asia of the University of Tokyo. Sorry for that, but that is too complex. Thank you for your nicely provocative points. We are, for those of you that came late and that are looking for a chair, on that side, it's still lots of space. Please come close also, because the closer you are to the center of the fishbowl, the quicker you can pick up the empty chair. For those of you that are just coming in, the fishbowl basically happens here in the center, the discussion. There's one empty chair, and after the introduction, you can occupy it, and then one of the three has to leave. Who can I give a first sort of reaction to discuss the issue of our research agenda.
Okay.
Please, Catherine.
Yeah. Well, just from listening to Kuroda, I heard a few research agendas, it seemed to me, emerging from what you were saying. And clearly one of them is just the historical evidence that we have for other kinds of currencies. Where have they occurred? What are the geography of those currencies? What are the cultures in which they've occurred? And obviously much of anthropology has been doing this kind of work. But it seems like there's an urgency to know more about the past and how communities worked with the lack of or different kinds of currency. So that's one kind of research that's, I guess, a sense of a bit of a pure research agenda. But I guess taking up your last point, what is the relationship between different kinds of currencies, systems or mutual credit systems on the relationship between those and social relationships and sociality? And it seems to me that there's a lot of interesting work that could be done and that needs to be done if we're trying to think about new futures for the ways that currency systems or forms of exchange interact with things like forms of land ownership and land use and land degradation, production relations, accumulation patterns, so that any studies historically, I think, need to be extended beyond just the system of exchange, but to think of how did that interact with the way that surplus was accumulated or land was degraded or sustained and so on. So it seems like there is a need for a more sophisticated relationship between exchange systems and other aspects of our social and economic life that is another area for research, especially because I think when we look at the development world, there is this whole push to eliminate the unbanked, as they're called, the whole push for electronic access to banking throughout the Pacific, for instance, been a big push for AusAid, one of the aid agencies in Australia. And there's an assumption that this kind of connection into various kinds of exchange and financial systems is part and parcel of becoming modern. So I think there's underlying what you're also pointing to is a critique perhaps of what modernity is and how we might think about post-development worlds or post-modern worlds where we have very different kinds of, I guess, worlds interacting with each other, where different kinds of exchange systems might work better than the kind of monoculture that many people have been talking about that has been so associated with a conception of modernity and progress. So the need for historical research that really talks to today and our need for thinking about new models for living it seems to me, something that you've opened up and is a really important agenda for people to step outside of their interest in the actual mechanisms of the exchange to their relationships with the kind of overdetermined world that they exist within.
Georgina wants to follow up to that. You can later on react, of course. Yes? It's working. It's working.
I turned it off. Now it's on again. Yes, I was thinking of the same. Historical evidence. Where were the previous currencies? But I was also wondering, the 2 cents that disappear every year, and I was looking at Shute, who collects coins from all over the world. You must have the 2 cents of many countries in your pockets. The money, a lot of money has disappeared with you. And I was thinking this is very common. We put coins in pockets or we collect them. Yes, money disappears. I never thought that at such an aggregate level it would have this effect. So I would like to think what kind of system would allow us to trace where money goes. How could we track how many times money turns around? And I think in a complementary, in a CCS, in a community currency system, this is something that we could think of. How many times does it go around? What transactions? How many transactions and for what amount? This is one thing that I would like to see happening. How do we study the circulation of money or the disappearance of money? The second question is, what makes the Georgina dollar worth anything? I mean, yes, I have a bakery, no, according to you. But why would anybody want my Georgina dollars to pay for Kathy's wine? And why would Kathy think that my Georgina dollars are worth anything? okay, you can always redeem it for bread, but you probably consume more than just bread and wine. How does it get into a system in which you can buy clothes, the manicure, and eventually electricity? And my last question is, how do we go from the circle to the prisma, back? Because you said in the prisma we have specific and personal social relations. And the market is the circle, the anonymity. Well, now we are in the circle. We are living the times of the circle in which everything is anonymous, and money has completely wiped off the consciousness or the awareness of the social relations behind every transaction. So how do we go back from circle to prisma? How do we go back from a world of anonymous money into a world of personal or specific or interpersonal transactions and money?
Please.
Okay, so yes, I would like to respond simultaneously to the baker and the wine shop owner. Yes, and see, I have to stress, and my study always depends on historical facts, but I think the contemporary of history, it's common that the usage of currency or dependency of currency closely related to degree of freedom. Freedom of the person can sell and the purchase by own will. If any person or oligarchy or any institute control or monopolize the circulation of goods, and it's in that case currency less necessary, because currency, especially tangible currency, make us to have freer opportunity to choose opponent in making transaction. And I miss you. And so, but now we are the stage of after 1929. We get accustomed to the situation. Central bank, it's the control by state, issued affluent currency. That's why we mistake, currency is always affluent, so they exist. But actually no, because as I repeat, they appear to be affluent, but easy to distribute, but actually difficult to assemble on demand, even now. Anyway, the nature of currency, which always stagnant, is concealed by the phenomena, the central banking system now. And the Georgina, the question, yes, yes. Now we appear to live in just the anonymous, the round world, but of course the village become now less important. But I think our society always mixture of anonymous relationship and some named relationship. But the named relationship always change form. Before, most of people they live with the village society or community-based town. But for the case of Japanese, we are now living in another form of the village. We call company, but actually company is Japanese village. We have to always take care of the neighboring the activity. So the village change their form, but always exists.
Now I have another question then, and I was thinking, what makes us look again at faces? Because I was wondering, in the crisis in Argentina, the crisis was so serious that we perhaps went from the circle to the prisma. We started seeing each other's faces again, and that's why we developed a kind of money that was useful for interpersonal relations. And then I ask, what are the factors that allow us to see the people behind the transaction again? Because that is perhaps a factor that makes us want to have a money that would express the faces with which we exchange. Could it be that in Spain, with the crisis, people are seeing each other's faces again? Who is producing the bread and the wine? And I wonder, perhaps this is something we need to explore behind CCS. What makes people want to have their own money? Is it perhaps the crisis a trigger for this? What do I do now? Who gets?
Usually you throw it away. Hi, good morning. Is it to me? Good morning. My name is Harry Terile. I come from 30 kilometers from here, city of Rotterdam. And I come in from a completely different angle than most of you do. I was educated a product designer and at Delft University of Technology, 15 kilometers from here. And I started reading books about the history of money systems. And one of the books was from the UK, from people from the British Museum. And it struck me that money systems and monetary systems, to my eyes, just pop up like product life cycles. So they come up, they have their flourishing time, and they go down again. And sometimes there are successful money systems, monetary systems, and sometimes there are Me Too products, and sometimes they don't start to go up at all, and they die even before they're introduced or only a few months after. And in history, as far as I can read, there's only been one currency that lasted for 1,000 years, and it was in ancient China, but it was only based on one book that I read. And so there's a time that euro comes up as a one-truth period, and the dollar comes up as a one-truth period in history. And as soon as they fail to answer the needs of the rest of society, then it's time for diversity again, just like in the product world. And if a monetary system is not able to meet the needs of the rest of society, then people will take off their hands of this monetary system, and the people inside that monetary system will try to stretch their curve, sometimes for 40 or 60 years. But unavoidably there will come a time, a point in history, that society takes its hands off this main system. And during that transition period, it's a period of diversity. And 2 years ago I went to the financial institutions in the Netherlands, which is only a small spot on earth, I know that. And I said to them, beware, we're entering an era of 30 years of monetary diversity. And they were well willing of hearing my message. They said, okay, we're ready for that, and we're open to that. And now my question comes. I see the need all around the world for this diversity. And I see people experimenting in thousands of experiments of community currencies. And if I look at that with my product design mind, I say it's only a matter of time before the new dominant design comes up. A dominant design coming up from this pool of diversity people are experimenting in. And my question to science would be, why is this dominant design not coming up at this very moment? We do have the need for a different currency system or monetary system. People are experimenting with it. The software is for free. We have lots of intellect. We are going down in economic cycles, so there are lots of people who have spare time to put in this experimenting. And my question to science is, don't we have found yet the new dominant design, the successful design, or is it not able, is it somewhere there out in those experimenting pools, but is it not able to scale up? That would be my principal question to science.
Somebody has to get up. No, I'm not saying. We need an empty chair. Two of you, please go.
I'd like to continue on this one because I will. We are really focusing in organizations like Coin and also others, also Harry's organization, by the way, on getting a model which is really working and which is having much more impact than all of the models that we see currently. So how can we create currency more in the social domain or more in the economical domain, which can be very, very successful? And what we really need is to have much more insights on what we started to call mechanics. And because I don't think there are a lot of people here from game theory, but in game theory they make 3 more or less layers or things that are interacting, which is the mechanics, the dynamics, and the aesthetics. Where in the mechanics, we have all the elements that the building blocks basically of local currency. So it's the fee structure, it's having demurrage or not, it's having 1 or 2 or 3 accounts, it's having paper or not, it's your payment methods, whatever. We made a list of these and we come to around 100 of them. The dynamics is where it really starts, because now we design something beautiful, it's there in the community, do they use it or not? And we see that there is an uptake, of course, of the people that are very aware, but we also see that a lot of groups are not using it. The makkie in Amsterdam is a social currency. It's used by the white people in that neighborhood, it's not used by the rest. The Bristol pound is a very successful currency, I think. It's growing very fast, but is there an uptake by everybody? No, not at all. We really need to understand specifically this whole dynamic part and to know how we can change this, which means that we need much more psychology here. We need to know what the drivers are for people to enter, and if they are part of it, to stay, and if they become less active, what we have to do to reactivate them, etc., etc. We need to understand these type of stuff, just like the big online games are doing that, because they do it all the time. So I really like to have research in there. We are not going to do that, but we would very be happy to give systems whatever that can be researched. The last part is the aesthetics. Aesthetics is the look and feel. So the Brixton pound is probably the most beautiful currency we have at the moment, although some people will debate this one, but I think it is. A lot of the other ones are very ugly. So if you get a very ugly one, you probably don't like it that much. That's problem one. But if you have an app, if you do everything online and you download it from the app store and you try to work with it, and after 10 minutes you still don't understand how to find your way around, or it looks crappy, then you basically will throw it away and that's it. And it takes years and years and years before you will go back to something similar.
We'll try it anyway. Without banknotes.
Okay. Without banknotes. So the question is, who of the researchers are going to pick up the agenda to do research to the dynamics and the psychological dimension of this whole aspect?
Okay, the facilitator just wants to make one point. It's fine to queue up here, but if the 3 around the table have not said anything yet, or someone is starting, it's not very polite to occupy the seat, because it means somebody cannot make his or her point. But if you find some of the speakers is speaking too long, please take the seat. The signal is very clear. Yeah. Please continue.
Yeah, the 2 points, product design and aesthetics, that triggered off something on my mind, because I think a point which is neglected in academic research is the relationship to the cultural sphere. Yeah, there are good contexts also here at this conference to the world of practical campaign work, to the world of politics. But as we could see also in the presentation, there were some presentations of paper notes, and yesterday at the dinner table there was a huge amount of Brazilian money on the dinner table. These are pictures, and the press people, the media people, they like it. They work with pictures and they work with stories. That's something very important, but that's a world on its own, and academics have to understand that. Yeah. By now, there are a number of contributions also in the fine art sectors who worked about money, but also about other topics. And so far, there's very little. There's one article in the RGCCR about art money, a project from Copenhagen, but there's not a lot. And what I also miss is a media analysis. We see in newspapers, on TV, that these people, journalists, work with pictures and stories. And the important thing is also that the academic sector is not autonomous. Yeah? Young researchers are motivated because they see the paper notes. And if somebody would really carry out the media analysis, I think they would also realize that first generation, they work in a different way. They have different pictures and stories. Yeah, Let's usually was presented with these little triangle stories. Um, so there's a variety of different approaches. Cultural sphere, that's something which has been neglected. That's my point. My name was Rolf Schröder. I forgot that to mention, from Germany. Thank you.
Well, well, many of you already know me, but my name is Miguel, and I come from Valencia, Spain, where we are seeing lots of problems. We are seeing the beginning of we are in Valencia and other parts of Spain. We are seeing dozens of social currencies. My point is that. That we have so much experience on social currency, based on abundance, while we still keep intact the conventional currency system like euro, US dollar, sterling pound, and so on. So why don't we be a bit more ambitious? To say maybe to the European Central Bank or Federal Reserve or Bank of England and so on, U.S. structure is so U.S. structure. The way you issue euro, sterling pound, US dollar is so is so full of faults, mistakes that it is not designed to be sustainable. So my idea is just like I don't know if we have somebody from Positive Money UK. Nobody here? Positivemoney.org. No, Positive Money.
Positive money.
Ah, okay. But my suggestion would be my idea would be to reflect about let's say to reflect our experience, so positive experience into the maybe redesigning of the conventional legal tenders. I don't know. It's maybe too ambitious, but we are so in a crisis.
Thanks. I want to pose a problem about financing public economy and care activity by local alternative currencies without interest, but also linked to the environmental resources available for a local community. We don't face this problem yet. How we can finance in an alternative way the public economy. Public economy are now the most important economic sector in all developed countries. And if we add the care activities, we have more than 50%. This kind of activity of economy is really, really different from the ancient industrial productive sector. We are facing an economy without growing. Public economy and care activity cannot grow. If they cannot grow, they cannot pay any kind of interest. This is obvious. But theoretical economics don't reflect about this. This is the main problem of our society. We have debt because we pay interest rate for health, for school, like in the States. In the States, the school, the health are the most important cost because they apply interest, profit, and things like this. It's not possible. And so we have to face again. I wrote about this 6 years ago. And I've ever read before one paper of Bernard Lieter and Mr. Wormoth. Sorry for my, they write about how to finance care activity, maybe 98. And since that period, we have seen almost nothing. I write something about this, about how to finance public economy. Just now we start, because there is a big crisis, and we have a crisis, debt crisis, and so we start to think. I think that this is the main question about a dominant design. Because if we have a alternative, it's not a currency, alternative financing of the care activity and public economy, we have the dominant, because they are quantitative and qualitative the dominant now. And which is this system? I believe that Professor Kuroda point out well. It's not currency, it's credit system. And the base of the credit system is now, I think, obvious, enough evident, the time labor. Because the care activities and the public economy are based on labor. This is the main resources now. And the main resources that a community have to take care of my environment is care activity, is labor. And for the most part of this kind of activity, 1 hour is the same for everybody, have almost the same value. I think that the Fourier-Ikipu system that refer to a medium value of the work could be good also for public economy. And stop, I think. Sorry.
Well,
I don't want to take that.
my name is Jordi Griera. I come from Barcelona, Catalonia, Spain. And well, our subject is to investigate ethics, the relationship between ethics and money and companies. And I would go back to the gentleman here, the product designer. He made the assertion that the most successful currency lasted 1,000 years ago. I'm afraid there are longer currencies, not 1,000 years, not ago, span time. Actually, about 4,000 years ago, the currency had been unchanged in Mesopotamia for about at least 4,000 years that we know, and maybe 10,000 years. We cannot be too sure because it depends on excavations and interpretations. But that kind of currency spanned a very, very large also surface of the then civilized world. The characteristics of that currency, which was a mutual credit recorded on clay. It was that people, the houses of that time, you see the houses are about the same size, which means there was equality among people. So the type of money had a counterpart in the social relationship. And when Professor Kuroda asserts that he says that the quality of money depends on social relationships, I would like to reverse this and say that in fact social relationships depend so much on the quality of money, and we are seeing it today. So there is inequality in the world. Since year more or less 2300 BC, the world has seen inequality due to having abandoned a good type of money and gone on to the wrong types of money. Now it is time to change this. And I would like an investigation to be done in this. So many saviors of mankind have come and have preached ethics, ethics by themselves. And ethics by itself cannot arrange things if the monetary system is wrong. Because a monetary system reverses all changes that you had tried to do to ethics. I'm sorry to say, I mean, Jesus was a fantastic guy, if you don't think it was anything else, but at least if he was a fantastic guy, but he failed. We have not been able to live up to his standards of ethics. We are not able to do it because our monetary system is simply wrong. So I suggest that our investigation should go in that way. At the moment a monetary system is built on the scarcity of money, because that is the tool of power, then it is like the lady here, I'm sure she's a very a pacifist. She doesn't look too bellicose to me, at least. So, but if I put the hand over her nose and her mouth and deprive her of air, suddenly she will become a very violent lady, but very, very violent. Why? Only because she has been deprived of something which is essential. And money is essential for our society. And money causes, the scarcity of money causes us to fight and to behave in an unethical relationship.
What's your question? What do you want people to research?
I just said it. So I would like to research the opposite of Mr. Kuroda's proposition. So how social relationships actually depend on the quality of money, and to find the type of money, not which is very economically efficient, but which is ethically very efficient. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mary Fee. I'm from Let's Link in the UK, and I've been working with and looking intimately at Let's schemes since 1991. It's always fun to do these academic analyses, and before I came here I thought we'd have some of them, and my expectations have been fulfilled, that are very pretty, but it's not how it really is. For example, the Chinese professor, he talks about a dichotomy. Can we have that picture back of the diagram, the dichotomy?
Yes. Which one do you want to see?
The diagram, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, in the mutual credit, what happens is that people, when they become intimate, they then want to become more private. So when they become really friendly, they don't record the transactions. Like, take the ultimate when you get into bed, you don't record that. And everything in between. So, and the other thing is that it's not necessary to draw a distinction between the mutual credit and the local currency, because there's absolutely no reason why in the mutual credit system you cannot also, as well as having the new online systems, you cannot continue, there's no reason why you cannot continue with the check service. People came from Brittany and showed us their passbooks. You can write your transactions down, keep your balance with you, and when that's reconciled, either all the details or maybe just the balancing amount is recorded. So that is mutual credit, but it's also anonymous. And the individual transactions remained anonymous. And there is also no reason why you can't have a bureau de change and take cash out, the beautiful notes, and put them back in again at the end of the trading day or whatever. I'm managing a festival in London annually. We transact £1,000 worth of volunteer transactions, and it's all done in cash. We give out the notes, they give it to the traders, we give them the cash back. It drives business to the stall holders, that's the purpose of it, so they don't take cash away. And so these dichotomies are not not the way to look at it. The way to look at it is to make your mutual credit systems sophisticated. I would like to point out that in the so-called successful Bristol pound, they completely ignored the presence of an existing mutual credit system, Bristol Let's. And when they turned up at a public meeting and said, how about us, we're running this Let's system, you know, can we engage with this at all? They said, this is something else, go away. Words to that effect. So that's just a few points to think about. You need to, you know, stop doing these theoretical dichotomies and think about how it really is on the ground. And over the years, we've been approached by dozens of students. It's on their, you know, on their course, something about studying these systems, and they come with these banal questions, you know, to get a pretty little picture at the end. And when I say to them, how about actually working with this? And then you'll find out about it. Most of them aren't interested. I've got one now who might be. Now, those are just some general things to think about, but specifically on future research, we have in the UK, as probably in other countries, social services are looking at having to tighten up their budgets, and we have a desperate situation with, in the social care system, you know, people who are disabled and stuck in their homes and have no families. They're sitting there waiting all day for a carer to come for 2 sessions of, you know, half an hour if they're lucky, or maybe 15 minutes to put a dinner in the microwave, and then there's a gap, and then wait for the next person to come. And there's no social care. And I would like to see some action research where we actually get some university people together with social services, they've got more clout than we have, and say, look, how about allowing these people who are stuck there to actually have some proper social care.
You have to stop here. Somebody is taking a chair. Means you have to stop here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so of course. Anyway, that's the research.
And Bernard, you're next in queue. I guess. Yeah, my name is Rob van Hilten. I'm one of the founders of COIN. And within COIN, I'm responsible for the development and management of the programs in the economic domain. Economy, we call them the blue programs. Next to that, I'm... the mic. Is this one better? Yes. Great. Secondly, I'm one of the board members of IRTA, which is the Global Industry Association for the Barter Industry. And I do have a problem, I must say. And that is that I'm glazing in the dark. And although I've been around in the community currency world for 20 years already, I do not have a clue on how big we are. And currently we are talking to all kinds of policymakers, financial institutions, the regulatory bodies, the departments of finance in the Netherlands, the European Investment Bank. And they ask us then, well, how big is your sector? And what determines your success, your so-called success? And we just don't know. So even within IRTA, which is the largest association that we have, we even are that big that we can afford for a employed chief executive. We do not know the world quite well. We do not come further than the 125, 130 members that IRTA has, and even within our own association, we do not really know how much trade do we represent, how much members do we have, what what determines the success of some programs and others. And that really, I think, is such a strong break on the full development of community currencies. And that if there is one research that I would really like to have done, is in the field of let's try to assess how big we are. And I think my question doesn't grow any bigger than this.
Okay. Please.
Hi, I'm Scott Morris from New York. I live in Ithaca, where the Ithaca Hour originated, and I'm consulting with them, as well as working on a startup cooperative in the currency space. So I see a lot of great discussions around, but so far I haven't heard about, kind of building on Rob's point, systems of indication that can kind of give us a new set of metrics for measuring the kind of value that we're bringing, because we're talking about bringing a lot more value than just traditional economic value. So I'd just like to kind of summarize a little bit of why I think that's really important, because I think that we're provided with a very important opportunity right now in terms of the evolution of money in human history. And I think that we should be sure to seize that as fully as we can. So money does a number of things for us, and I just wanted to lay out the way that I've perceived that to just kind of lay the basis. I see that it's a medium of exchange, it's a store for value, and a unit of account. I think these are all generally accepted. But I think that we're also starting to realize that money provides a system of incentives for human behavior. And I think that we would do well to include that piece of functionality inside our understanding about what money does in society, because we're starting to move the creation and maintenance of money from a centralized and autocratic way into a more distributed and democratic way. And I think that one of our greatest opportunities is to start to use kind of a self-reflective mechanism whereby we're analyzing how we are doing the economy, so to speak, what the economy is showing back to us, and then also what more do we want, and how can we change our activity in a way to provide more of that. And then also, I think our greatest challenge is to learn to express that value of these new systems from just traditional GDP terms into more triple bottom line terms of people, planet, and profit, and then doing that through social wealth indication systems. So I think my question to the research community is, how can we mainstream the use of those new standards of indication and start to draw on that new value that we're creating, while making, kind of building the business case first and speaking to people in language that they're familiar with, but then also extending that and, starting to lay the new expectations. And then I think a secondary question is, how can we build systems of support for people that are bringing that kind of value, so that, we don't go and dedicate our lives to work in the new economy, but then when it comes time to retire, we're found that we don't have a pension or something like that, that we need to build a social system of support for work in this realm as well. That's all.
Well, I'm glad to see you here again. We interchanged some banknotes yesterday. I represent the Spanish from Boniatos. I'm a college professor in Madrid. My name is William Conrad von Prittwitz, and I'm here to just briefly say a few words about myself first, and then introduce the Boniatos, which is a social market in Madrid that created their banknote, and they have several providers who, in fair trade, are using the banknotes that we're working with. My PhD in 2005, and as a college professor, I'm directing a few postdoctorate students related to this topic as well. Has a web page as well, which is billetesmunicipales.com. You can see about 10,000 different Spanish banknotes there that originated just like the Depression script in the United States in the 1930s, based on theories of Schwundgeld and interchange of, Schwundgeld systems. And I would like to address something that one of the professors here said, which was money and freedom. And well, ever since man discovered money, there have been probably reformers wanting to abolish money again. Like the discovery of fire, the invention of the wheel, the discovery of money has an ambivalent reputation. And well, the greatest tool of freedom ever invented, Hague, I think, said that. And then Sophocles, a few years later, mentioned that it was the most evil curse of man. So the radical beginning of reform that we're going through now was social aid and Ausgleichskassen in Germany. I've seen there are a few German-speaking people around here as well. And the natural order of free money and free land, thoughts that are pretty old as well. I'd like to, discuss with you here and invite students to maybe help us out and and find some orthodox ways to address Marxist theories, and maybe even the Anabaptists from Münster who did this in 1533 and have failed, and for many things like that that are related. I'd like to come back to our little attempt to make it work in Spain. Of course, you know that Spain has loads of problems right now, and we're facing more and more currencies that are popping up that are not being controlled, and maybe what we needed there was someone to look at them closely and maybe control them. Well, to conclude, most great speakers speak 2 minutes too long.
No, it's too long, because someone from the audience thinks you cannot make that point. So.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Okay. You can get up and give him the floor. No, if you want to get it, but if you sit down, you tell him to shut up, basically.
Oh, no, I didn't want to.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Finish up.
Okay. Well.
It's my fault.
Okay. I have a relatively short point to make. A domain that has been not touched or very little touched is the interface between conventional money and complementary currency. And I'm giving 3 examples of that. For more than 10 years, I've looked for a PhD student who is strong in conventional economics to actually make an analysis of what the impact is of complementary currencies, under which conditions do they contribute to inflations, and under which conditions don't they do that. It's a very critical domain, because the central banks will use the argument of inflation for eliminating everything. Okay, so that is a domain that's critical strategically and has not been looked at. My personal claim is that in some circumstances it can, in some circumstances it cannot, but we haven't clarified that. A second example is, what is the techniques used to get rid of complementary currencies when they become successful? Okay, which is something that is now starting to happen. Okay, the case of Argentina would be a very interesting one, because there is clear evidence that basically people working for banks have made fakes, sold them in the markets. They were arrested. They spent 1 night in prison. And the judge the next day had to release them. There was not question about the fact that they were sabotaging the systems, but there is no legal status for complementary currency. So they were just photocopying pieces of paper. Now, I believe we need to get ready for these kinds of things, and nothing done for it. A third domain is, how do you make financially sustainable complementary currencies? Normal people need some conventional money income. And currently we're basically relying on saints and when they burn out, the whole thing stops. So these are 3 aspects which I believe has not been studied and would be critical for the success in the longer term of what's going on. Thank you.
There are 3 areas in which I think academic research could be helpful.
Sorry, I have to stop you here. One of you have to step up. Thank you.
But before I get into that, I just want to say that the main jobs that we have to do are to, first of all, reclaim the credit commons. We've allowed the credit commons to be monopolized by a banking cartel that exploits it for their own benefit and is the major factor in the rapid deterioration of social dynamics and the environment. The interest burden that is attached to borrowing our own credit back from the banks causes exponential growth in debt, which drives exponential growth in economic activity, which drives destruction of the environment and increasing differentiation of wealth and income. So by reclaiming the credit commons, the way we can do that is by organizing mutual credit clearing. I believe that mutual credit clearing is the disruptive technology that is going to make all the difference and displace dominant money paradigm from its position. What we need, in addition to reclaiming the credit commons, is to define a independent, concrete measure of value. The traditional statements about what money is, medium of exchange, measure of value, and a store of value, these are contradictory functions. I've been arguing this for 25 years. In my first book, Money and Debt, A Solution to the Global Crisis, I elaborated upon that. Money cannot serve those contradictory functions. Money is pure and simple a medium of exchange. And we need an independent measure of value. When money was gold or silver coins, yes, it could serve all three functions. But money today is credit. And we need to have a way of measuring the quantity of credit that is due. And the way we do that is by using some individual commodity or group of commodities. I favor a group of commodities for various reasons, on which we can define a unit of account. So, the areas for research in academia are to research what would be a good independent measure of value that could define a unit of account for our credit systems. Secondly, what are the metrics for measuring system health in a mutual credit system? IJCCR recently published my article, Measuring and Maintaining the Health of Credit Clearing Systems, and I would like to see others pick up on that and elaborate. Thirdly, I think we have a great deal to learn from history, particularly the free money movement, and a tremendous amount of great academic material that's available from the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. And I've cataloged a lot of that material on my website, reinventingmoney.com. You look for the names of von Beckerath, Rittershausen, Zander, Milo, and there are a couple others. If you look in the library section of that website, you'll find them.
I have a question at a different level. During times of system transition, does science hold the best cards? With its scientific methods, when society is in need of redesign and decision making rather than simulating. So do you as a group hold the best cards for the phase that society is in now? That's my basic question to you. And I personally must say that I am motivated by articles by Mr. Greco Jr. And if I read them, they're not scientifically written down. They're written down like design papers. They're written down like essays, inviting others to comment or to think or design with him. And personally, I get a lot of more motivation from those kind of pieces than I get from the scientific debates, which are scientifically pure and okay. That's my question.
Hi, yeah, I was interrupted in what I was saying, so I'll continue. I've also had a great deal to do with activists. I was very closely involved in organising one of the venues for the European Social Forum in 2004. And I love, you know, mixing with these young people. But what's interesting is they are not, almost none of them have shown an interest in monetary reform or in community currencies. Activists go for volunteering. And the volunteering is massively bigger, I can only speak for the UK, massively bigger than any activity that's measured in any form of credit, time bank, mutual thing. They think that volunteering absolves you from the whole problem of dealing with that stuff, and it's kind of pure idealism. And even with the transition towns, nearly all that activity is done by volunteering. Even when they create transition currencies, they are volunteering to do the work of creating the currency. And in some ways, I feel that it's been funded as a sort of diversion from the real stuff, which is the mutual credit. I can go into detail on that. So that's just observations about, looking at the whole picture of what is the volume of activity in volunteering as opposed to any form of mutual credit. The other thing I was talking about, attempting to engage with some sections of the mainstream, and what I was saying about social services and the care system, I found out a lot more about it than I ever wanted to know. And one thing I've realized is that it's very difficult to understand what's going on, because people are in their deep separate pockets. They don't often look across sectors. And in the National Health Service, the staff are under stress. There's not enough, they don't have enough staff to do the work that's needed of keeping patients mobile. And that's another whole big area where it could be engaged with on a more formal level than we have the resources to do it. That sort of work has to be funded.
Thank you. So I'm Jérôme Blanc from Lyon, France, and I would like to stress 3 points for research agenda. The first one comes from a remark from one person who talked before about monetary diversity as a transition between two regimes. He said that monetary diversity was something like for 50 years before we find a new regime. I think that's a quite interesting thing, because this relates to the classical view on monetary diversity or plurality as something that it is not normal. And so the one point for a research agenda is to wonder, to think, how could we have a permanent monetary system based on plurality? Permanent, which means also in evolution, not something that would not evolve, of course. And this requires historical analysis, of course, and theories. The second point comes from the chart or the figure we have on these slides from Kuroda, and Georgina commented this and saying how could we go back to the first prisma, yes, where the market is not so important. And I think it's not exactly the way we should think. Sorry, Georgina. I think we should think rather in order to understand the complex constitution of societies with distinct spheres of interdependence, some with the market, others without the market. So some with strong community links, others without community links. And we should try to think the various roles of money in these situations. So what's the role of money on the market sphere? What's the role of money outside the market sphere? What are other roles of money in other spheres? I think that yesterday we've had presentations talking about Polanyi, for example. I think it can be a tool in order to understand this. And finally, what can be the role of money in connecting those spheres? Of course, this is a very important thing. And this could lead to better understanding of the various roles of various monies in our complex societies with market and without market, depending on the cases. And the first point is quite provocative, maybe going back to the basics of what makes all of us being here. Do we need what can explain or justify, legitimize CCs? Is there a need for money, or is there a need for incomes? People generally need incomes. Anyway, what sort of money they have, they need incomes. And if we don't talk about money, but about incomes, what matters firstly is how do we get incomes? From wages, from property earnings, from turnover, and so on. From the state, we can have many sorts of incomes. And maybe those incomes can be related to different currencies, different monies. But I think that the first question we should ask is not do we have a need for distinct monies, but do we have a need for incomes? And so the other question that comes is what money for that? Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Christophe Plas, and I would like to professionalize the movement. I would like to work 5 days a week to scale up this movement, and to do so my question is how can we finance with both conventional money and complementary currencies when becoming relevant, leadership competencies, project management for currency design, and society support legal transformation which allow open innovation. And to do so, how can we assess evidences of CCS impact linked with ethic, culture, governance, economic, social and environmental aspect? So those are my two agendas for future research for CCS. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Stephanie Rierick. I'm with Time for the World and the Dane County Time Bank based in Madison, Wisconsin, United States. And I just wanted to share that I'm a big fan of experiential learning and trial and error, and that's what's tended to work for me in my life. And we're about to experiment with tackling some of these issues, inspired by a lot of the work of a lot of you here, forming mutual aid networks that connect conventional money, cooperative saving and lending practices and models, mutual credit that has a price and can manage in-kind and professionalized transactions, and then time banking mutual credit in a cooperative structure where we can provide an opportunity for people to piece together varied work based on what they're passionate about and what they would like to do with their time, with varied compensation, using those tools to facilitate exchange in that which is abundant, those tools which are abundant, such as time banking, sharing, gift economies, more scarce, price-based mutual credit, those tools, and the things that you absolutely need money for. We have cooperative saving, lending, slow investment pieces. So we are actually building that right now at a very extremely skeletal level on purpose, because we would like to work with people in a manner of a co-production network where we build it together from the ground up, people who care about these things. So I'll invite you to check out our presentation this afternoon, and also sign up at mutualaidnetwork.org if you would like to be starting at a ground level of experimenting on that. We don't expect that it has to live there forever or only live there, and we don't expect or want to own anything, but I think it's time to really pull these pieces together in a complementary way, and really design for complementarity and try it ourselves. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you. My name's Shan Turnbull. I'm from Australia, and I'm a founding member of a UK-based Sustainable Money Working Group. And I want to extend the research question suggested by Bernard and Tom. Tom said we need an independent measure of account. I'd like to reinforce that request and add to it to find a way that we can connect that independent unit of value to the environment on a sustainable basis. So we want to connect the market system to the environment. in some way or other. Tom has suggested a basket of currencies. There's other ways of doing it, which I... Thanks, Tom. Okay, but we need a way of connecting it to the environment and sustainability. That's the point I wanted to extend the research question. Bernard had two good points about how currencies are banned, and I'd like to extend that question to what currency should be promoted to add to the defects of the present system, those which regulators should facilitate to make up like negative interest rate money sort of things. So that's sort of extending his research question, and of course, which ones affect inflation or deflation. So I'd just like to emphasize those and extend the research questions and add to it two more. One is the question I asked Professor Hart, I think, yesterday. What are the optimal currency areas? Mundell's done research into that, have different views. And you need, it's always a trade-off between too small or too big, and how do you connect it to the environment in those areas? And the other research question, which is a reason for forming the Sustainable Money Working Group, is what happens when the next crash comes? What is the best form of emergency currency rather than cigarettes, rum, whiskey, and other sorts? And the reason that the cooperative movement in the United Kingdom, which has 10 million voters, their leader is Ed Mayo. He is a founding sponsor of the Sustainable Money Working Group. He wants a way to keep the cooperatives working when the banks crash. The Basel Committee feel sure there's going to be another crash because it's too complex for their understanding what is happening. Everybody's expecting another crash. It's the reason why the British Chamber of Commerce, who employ 5.5 million voters in England, also a member of our group, they want to keep small business and SMEs going, as does the Prime Minister of the UK want to fund them, and they haven't found a way of pumping liquidity into SMEs. So how can alternative currencies provide liquidities like the extending the Swiss wear idea? So there's some positive political actions to consider. Thank you.
Okay. We're entering the last 5 minutes of the fishbowl discussion. I want to ask everyone to be very brief so that those that are still sort of queuing up here can all say their point, please.
Okay, yeah, my name is Sjoerd van Wijk. I'm a PhD student in economics. Well, there's one big question that is underlying many of the suggestions for future research here, and that's the one of practical implementation. Then I miss a second question that's also really important, that's that of psychology. So what is actually the psychological influence on the individual of a certain currency? What does it do with his behavior? Well, I think within economics there we have certain methods that can help find the answers to these questions. So there's a recent field of experimental economics in which people are invited to the laboratorium, and they have to make decisions which are incentivized, which means that they have to make decisions that have an influence on how much money they will get at the end of the experiment. So each decision they make, it raises or lowers their ultimate payoff. So within such a setting, you could try to implement LETS and see what will happen, and then you can discover certain psychological mechanisms, perhaps. LETS itself has not been investigated yet, but a related example could be a small, simple game called the ultimatum game. You have two persons. One person has 10 euros, and he offers a certain amount to the other person in a take it or leave it offer. So the other person gets the offer, and you can either say, I'll take that offer, or you can say no, and then no one will earn anything. And when he accepts, then the proposed division will be made. So rationally, you would expect that you offer the lowest amount possible, and the other will always say yes, because, having something is better than having nothing. However, what you do see is that people offer 50-50 most of the time, and many people reject really low offers. So there's some sort of notion of fairness in play within this game. And yes, so you see that there's some sort of social preferences at stake. And yeah, in the same way you can see in Let's also maybe some sort of social preferences. And then as a last point related to that, I want, yeah, okay.
So Sjoerd, let's speak and see what we can do. Okay. I'd like to offer something because we are questioning all the time. I think we are not the only party, but one of the parties that is having a lot of data. So we use computerized models. We have payment software. This is basically a huge source of data. And up till now, there was not one researcher trying to request this or find out or see what the spread is or try to get information on velocity or whatever. I mean, this data is there. Use it.
Well, I will continue from this comment. My name is Arini, and there are three issues for further research. First is how to approach the methods we use. Approaching quantity is a major problem for us because in mainstream economics, quantity has been used and approached in a very different way, which has been destructive, I think. But we have data and we have quantitative data as well, and the statistical tools we have till now are useless. And this is why all this data has not been used for research within the framework we need. The second research area is the area that cannot be characterized or named as strictly monetary. There are many structures which go hand to hand with parallel currencies that are non-monetary at all. So I think we don't have research on this area. And this is important because even we find those structures in many local economies and neighborhoods, and we ignore it in research. And the third comment about research agendas is I would like just to support many of the ideas that have been mentioned here, like looking at ancient Mesopotamia and Eastern Mediterranean societies of late Neolithic age, which have been fascinatingly egalitarian, and see how their economies were working, and or look to other areas. I can say that I have made some, let's say, pilot studies on this, and they are fascinating. So I can say that there are vast amounts of data in unusual places to research, like local traditional economies, fairy tales, artwork. Not only traditional, like cinema movies in Greece give us more information about multiple currencies circulating in Greece during the 60s than any academic research. So I think that in any country we could find such data and such research fields, but it is quite unusual if there are unusual fields of research that we could explore as well.
I'm Makoto Nishibe. I'm from Japan. Actually, I'm from the University of Hokkaido. My major is economics. So, yeah, now I would like to talk about three things for the academic agendas. I just published a Japanese book I edited. This is called Community Currencies. And then I have many contributions from Mr. Rieters and Glecos and so on. And we have 10 contributions from the foreign countries. So it took me 5 years to translate all the things, and then anyway, so we still feel the linguistic gap between the East and West. And I would like to suggest that the one of the topic is the theoretical one. I think the most of all the community currency or complementary currency, where we see these things, we might think this is money. So the money is something about economy or market and so on. But I come from the economics, so I see this definition is very narrow. Community currency is something more than just money, I think. So my definition is something like the integrative or comprehensive communication medias. So which means that the community currency is on the one side money, so which is related to the economic affairs, but on the other hand, this is, I think, language. So express something between the agent, social relationships, and group dynamics, and so on. So this side is also related to the society or cultures, different from economy. So we need to have some kind of, a general definition of community currencies. And we also have the diversity of the money. So we need to have some kind of theories to explain why we have, multiple currencies in the world. The second, okay? Oh, okay.
I am responsible for the timekeeping.
Okay.
And so I cannot allow you to do the 2 points.
2 point. As a 2 point.
Okay.
I have
1 point.
The second is the policies. Okay.
And what is the third?
The third one is history.
Okay, fine. Thank you very much. Let's pass to the last person. Yes, because we are very brief, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Dominique Thor from the University of Nice, Sophie Antipolis, France. It's the first time that I participate to your group, and I found very interesting this conference, and it is not finished, but it is already a success, and very interesting the questions that I've been raising during this fishbowl since. So I would like to insist on 2 points. The first is that we don't lack money. We don't like. We have enough quantity of money, of currency, but this money is not is not well distributed among people. Some people lack money, and some other have not enough or too much. And the other problem is that we don't lack means of payment. We have a lot. But these means of payments are not well adapted to all situations we faced. So there is a problem with the distribution of money, of currency, and this is the need for complementary currency, I think. And we have a problem to adapt the means of payments we have to all situations. For example, when we have distant payment to make between people isolated, for instance, farmers in emerging countries, we have not such means of payment adapt to this situation. And a way to cross these two problems is to develop some electronic platforms using national currencies, official currencies, or using new currencies, community currencies, complementary currencies. I think that using electronic platform will be a way to adapt to a problem that is well known to monetary theoreticians, that is externality due to the dimension of area of acceptance of currency. If you have not able to increase the area of acceptance of this complementary currency, we have the possibility of this complementary currency to collapse. So for me, in the agenda, we have to add this problem of the electronic platform. The second point is to develop experiments to know, it has been raised in the discussion, to know well the way, the situation where a complementary system could develop, could be a success, or could collapse. And probably we don't know completely the situation, the different behavior that help to develop this system or collapse. This is an agenda to add in the agenda using experiments as yesterday has been developed by one presentation, or using agent-based models. This is another methodology to understand this behaviors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We are approaching the end of this exciting fistball, and I want to congratulate all of you. No, we just leave it like that. We only have still Georgina in here. Actually, this was a self-facilitated brainstorm. I only intervened 2 or 3 times, just saying stop. That was all, and people reacted, so that worked very well. Georgina, 2 or 3 points that you pick up here very briefly from this brainstorm that is worthwhile to take any further.
It was really a storm. I wrote down 37 research questions and I missed part of it. Fortunately, we have somebody that did take notes all the time, and we'll get to the maybe 10 questions I'm still missing. But I would like to pick up a few things that came up regularly. First, the experimental character of CCS in general. We all seem to agree that we are in a very early phase, and this came up in various ways. A, CCS are not yet well established. I think this idea of the product cycle and being in the first phase was very interesting. Also, in terms of research, we are in a very early stages. Edgar asked at some point, I don't know who's going to pick up these research questions. Well, we are starting. Probably what I got today is enough for the rest of my career, but we are starting. And also, in terms of developing new tools, people talked about game theory, simulation games, various new tools to be able to research, to experiment also with new methodologies. So in various aspects, in various ways, I see this idea of beginning, experiment. Another point that I think is very interesting that came up is the existence of databases and people willing to be researched. This is quite a luxury for people doing research. Not everybody wants to be a subject of research. Apparently COIN has databases. It's good to know. Most of the time we don't know where to start looking for data as researchers. So this is useful information. And what came up again, 2 points very regularly, is history. And this is very interesting. We even for us in development studies, that it's inherently, essentially a dynamic concept. We study history too little for my taste. And finally, policy. And I was thinking that in terms of policy, we do not have much information of various legal and regulatory regimes, and how different countries, different CCS have found ways or loops to make CCS not illegal. And this is interesting because there are various arguments that have been used to, not go to prison, not spend one night in prison. And we have, to my knowledge, we have no database where to find these arguments. That's it. Now I will announce what comes next, if you let me.
Yes, I'll let you. But I had to tell everyone, before thanking everyone for this responsible way of brainstorming, yes, and also telling that the poster session is upstairs during the coffee break. So everyone having a poster session, run up now so you'll get there before everyone gets coffee. And Georgina?
I was going to say that. Posters, this is a very long coffee break, so we have a bit of time to talk to the people presenting their schemes, their cases, their current, and there will be a moment to exchange notes, vouchers. Whoever brought them, we will exchange them. There's a lot of art in these vouchers, so we will play with our money. Yeah, it was reduced to I guess we can start at 11:45 then. We take another 15 minutes. So we have almost 1 hour,
You're the
45
boss.
minutes. I think it's worth it that we have time to look around in the posters. We have about 20 posters, so.
Okay.
Tonight,
Where's the
here.
cultural event? Also upstairs, where you'll have the coffee. So, can I ask you to give you all a hand for this very nice brainstorm? Thank you very much.